Good afternoon and welcome to an EAS Consulting Group webinar on medical device enforcement presented by EAS independent consultant George Calafactor. EAS is a member of the certified group of companies and is a global leader in regulatory solutions for industries regulated by FDA and USDA. Our network of over 150 independent advisors and consultants enables EAS to provide comprehensive consulting, training, and auditing services, ensuring proactive regulatory compliance. From strategic product development, preparation of technical submissions, including 510Ks, or assistance with Form 483s or warning letters, EAS offers the detailed knowledge and experience your company requires. Today's presenter is George Calafactor, who consults with EAS clients on FDA quality assurance and regulatory compliance issues. He worked with FDA for over 21 years, and he performs reconciliation and readiness activities specific to medical devices. He also performs FDA Level 2 QSIP inspections. He creates quality system procedures and many other services. During the webinar, you may ask any questions by typing them into the questions box, and we will save all questions for the end. Just a note on the slide handouts, the file is very large, as you will see, so I will not be able to send them through the email, but we will certainly include them when we post the recording to the website. So with that, I will say thank you for joining us, and I will turn the presentation over to George.
Thank you very much, Amy. As she stated, my name is George Calafactor. I'm a regulatory compliance expert. What that means is I'm familiar with not only FDA laws and regulations, but international regulations such as Health Canada, EU, and others. Not only do I get involved with medical devices, but all different type of FDA regulated areas, foods, drugs, cosmetics, and even some areas outside of FDA like cannabis products. So I'm mostly into the medical devices area. So I'd like to give a introduction about FDA, their enforcement activities, and some trends regarding medical devices. So what we're going to start with about is FDA. What is that and their enforcement actions? Then I'm going to show some data from the FDA websites. And actually, you can go into the after the presentation, look at as much data as you want. I'm just giving an overview. And then we're going to talk about what happens afterwards. So first of all these different areas, FDA, Health Canada, EU, etc., they have quality system for medical device products. It's a little bit different than areas such as foods, pharmaceuticals, biologics, because those are mostly GMP testing areas where medical devices deals with a total quality system area. So QSR, you might have heard of that. It's called Quality System Requirements under the Code of Federal Regulations. Part 21 is for FDA and for DEA. Part 820 under Title 21 deals with quality system regulations. The 800 sections of the Title 21 are for medical devices. So the QSR, which is the GMPs for medical devices, is Part 820. Why do you have to do this? You know, it's good business practices. Plus, if you are manufacturing a finished medical device product and you want to have it used in the United States, either foreign or US company doing so, you have to comply with FDA law and regulations. Plus, it makes good business sense because you want a good quality product. You don't want to have a lot of complaints or recalls or activities like that. This is some things that FDA can do. They can suggest a recall in a lot of areas, which really means that they can, seize your product. Uh, but under medical devices, they can also have recalls. And that's in Part 810. That's really if there is a health hazard. So everything that I'm talking about here deals with risk and hazards. They also can prosecute any employee. There's basically two types of FDA investigators. There's the civil side, which I was under, and the criminal side. So the criminal side basically go for the bad guys that are doing things wrong on purpose. Again, the QSR basically is what's in the 800 section. These are basically the top level procedures and forms that all companies have with medical devices. Basically, they're about the same for each company. Structured a little different, how you write them, but basically it's what are you doing in Part 820, 830, etc. The how part is how you're going to do it. How am I going to manufacture the product? How am I going to go ahead and have a machine calibrated? How am I going to validate a process? How am I going to design a product from idea to transfer? So this is basically unique to each company. They figure out how they're going to do that. FDA really doesn't say that. But the thing that FDA looks at is your procedures and your operations. So basically the key rule is say what you do and do what you say. Meaning, if you write it down, you have to do it. If you're doing something, you better have it written down. So they're looking at both ways. So basically it starts with the QSR, in this case, Part 820. Then you have a quality manual and policy. That's basically the top level procedures. Explain we are a medical device company doing X, and we're doing design control or manufacturing or contract manufacturing or servicing or whatever the case is. Then you describe what you're doing in a diagram. You have SOPs, which are the what, like what is design controls or CAPA or whatever the case is, what you're doing. The how, which is work instructions, forms, and templates. And then, of course, the actual data, the paperwork that you show that you've done that, which are the results. And that's what FDA is basically looking at. For Part 820, these are the various sections here. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail of what they are. Basically, when the FDA comes in, they're going to look at your manufacturing areas and your products. For medical devices, there's three types. There is received goods, in-process products, and finished products. They're going to look at a lot of your records. They're going to talk to people. They're going to look at complaints, non-conforming products. That's product that did not pass your specifications, and the CAPA system. They're going to talk to top management and to employees. So the QSR basically applies to all medical device products that are finished. The key there is finished medical devices, whereas other products that FDA regulates, such as foods and pharmaceuticals and biologics, those deal with the for pharmaceuticals and biologics, the active ingredients. That is the bulk product that makes that. For devices, it's only the finished product, not the components. Components are the responsibility of each finished medical device manufacturer. So basically, there was no requirement at all for GMPs, good manufacturing practices, for medical devices at all until 1976. There were a couple products that were grandfathered in, such as lenses for eyes, contact lens solutions, those type of things, which those were regulated under the GMPs for pharmaceuticals. But because of major problems in the 70s, such as the Delcon shields, pacemakers, etc., a lot of recalls and quack devices also occurring, there was basically a war, and that's where 820 came to be. But it was basically similar to the GMPs for pharmaceuticals and biologics, which was the testing part. You manufacture a product and you test it and it passes or didn't. But as a result of that, there was a lot of problems because no one took into consideration where we're getting the product from and also how it's designed. So there were a lot of recalls that occurred from the 70s to the 90s, and people were looking at, well, why is this product failing? You know, we manufactured it right, it tested properly, went out the door. Well, that's because they didn't consider design controls and purchasing controls. So therefore, at the same time, ISO 3045 was coming about, and that's where they modified 820 to a quality system viewpoint. So this is it basically now from 1996 on. It's looking at these major areas: management controls, design controls, production process controls, facility and equipment controls, material controls, documentation change control, and the CAPA system, which is the CAPA system plus these three subsets, which are out of 820, 803, 806, and 821, which are medical device reporting, reports of corrections and removals, and medical device tracking. So this is basically what it looks like. And the key here is the CAPA system is related to data. So you need a lot of data to show, are we manufacturing something good? Are we testing it good? Are we designing it? And there's two types. There's internal data, which is non-conforming product, and there's external data, which is complaints. So I'm going to get into that in a little bit. We're going to first start about FDA. There's two types of activities that FDA investigations branch does. They inspect. So what that means is they come in, they show their credentials, issue a notice of inspection called an FDA 42. And they ask, what are you doing? They watch your operations. They also collect evidence for medical devices. They really don't collect physical medical device products, but they collect paperwork if something is wrong. If there are problems, they put it on an FDA 43 form, which is basically a list of observations, what you've done wrong because you didn't meet the medical device laws and regulations. If they are going to collect any samples, they issue a FDA 44 form, which is very rare on medical devices. They also have to prove that something crossed state lines, either your suppliers, contractors, or customers, or outside the state. So they collect that paperwork. The reason for that is that's how federal agencies or basically can go ahead and do their activities. Something has to cross state lines, or you have to be associated with American Indian tribes. The other one is they want to show who's responsible for what, because if there is a problem, they have to then issue paperwork to the most responsible person. That's the basic routine investigation side. The investigational side here is where there's a problem. Maybe a company contacted FDA and said, hey, we have a breach here, somebody's tampered our product, or maybe there are a lot of outbreaks or recalls or complaints, and FDA is visiting these companies to figure out what's going on here, what's the major problem. So these are basically no 42 is given to the folks. could do undercover activities too. So it's a little different type of activity. That's mostly on the civil side. If the civil side finds something wrong and it's really criminal, and they hop it over to the criminal side, then that's a whole different game there. On that side, there's folks with guns. They come in, they search, and they take everybody's computers and papers, and they put people in jail. And that's really for the very heavy bad guys. Less than 5% or so of companies are like that. So when FDA comes in for medical devices here, you want to make sure you're complying with the Food Drug Cosmetic Act and these various sections in the CFR. They're also going to figure out who's responsible for what. So they're going to ask who is doing, design controls. They're going to ask that person about the design controls, for example, CAPA, etc. So this is what the forms look like. So this is basically a 42, and there's additional information there about medical devices. This is an example of a 43, and what they do is they just put the observations down, and they're ranked by the activity. For example, the first one deals with CAPA. The next one deals with production process controls. So they're done by these subsystems. For medical devices, there's an additional part, and it deals with audits. The other areas that FDA regulates, foods, drugs, cosmetics, etc., a lot of companies do internal audits, but it's not required by law. For medical devices, it's required by law that you do internal audits. And basically, you catch more things than FDA does. So if FDA finds things, comes back and finds it again, they're going to gig you on not doing audits properly because you should have caught it before FDA. So this is some language that's in here that deals with that. Again, FDA doesn't find everything. The QSIT activity is one that does. Again, this is the 44 if you collect samples. Again, this is very rare for medical devices. There's two different types of inspections. The QSIT approach right now, quality system inspection technique, and that is basically one that deals with those 7 subsystems that I explained to you earlier. MedSAP is one that basically it's a program, and there was a pilot program that occurred with it a few years ago. And this is where third-party companies go ahead and come in and do an audit. It's very precise. And it's mostly with 1345. That is the ISO program for medical devices. A lot of countries use it, like the EU, Health Canada, and others. So that's basically the main gist. And then if you have operations and or customers and or products distributed in certain countries, like say Canada, Japan, EU, US, then those specific regulations also apply too. So we're going to cover QSIT first. So QSIT looks at these key elements. It's a top-down and bottom-up type of system. They ask basic questions. There's about like 6 to 15 per each subsystem. There are 4 major areas with that. The first thing that they do is, if you're doing fine, basically go ahead and call you up and say, hey, I'm going to be here on blah, 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 whatever date that is, usually about 5 days from when they call. So that means that you get your activities in order. You also send them your top level procedures so FDA can look them over. That's the first part. Then an FDA comes in, they do their inspection, they write up information on the 43. So they bring a computer and a printer in, and it's called Turbo EIR, which means that these informations are already plugged in. So they just find the citation and they put the actual information that's the violation for your company underneath it. So each of those are basically scored, and then you have a chance to annotate that if you're going to correct it, or if you need more time, or no comment, or whatever the case is. That's only for medical devices. And then after the inspection is done, you'll get a copy, maybe get a copy of the report. And I'll explain that to you in a second. So these are basically the areas, if you need more information about QSIT and the inspection guides, you can look at. So again, it's 4 major subsystems: management controls, design controls, the CAPA system, and production process controls. While they're asking questions in areas about those, they're also covering the other systems, which is documentation change control, facility control, equipment control, and material controls. With these different systems, they basically do it by risk. So for your very first QSIT inspection, you're going to cover all of these areas. For your next inspection, if it's okay, and I'll explain a little bit what the okay part means, we're going to do CAPA plus one of the others, either management controls, design controls, or production process controls. And then they're going to do that again and then go back to all areas again. So it's going 4, 2, 4, 2, back and forth. On the other hand is the MedSAP. And again, this is not done by FDA, but done by approved third-party people. And they basically came in and did a pilot study, and it was very successful. The problem now is with the COVID-19, a lot of these audits are done remotely through desk. These are basically the members that we have. So we have Brazil, Australia, Canada, Japan, US. Folks that are kind of thinking, well, should we do it or not? Or the EU, UK, WHO. Here's some new members that are looking into it: Argentina, Korea, and Singapore. So those are basically the areas that MedSAP is doing. Again, you don't have to go through that program, but if you want to, Health Canada, that's how they're doing their inspections right now. FDA is not, and the reason for that is it's ISO 1345 based. So FDA, when they have new rules, they publish it in the Federal Register. The problem is any ISO type of standards you have to pay for. So there's a problem there putting these standards in a Federal Register that everybody can look at. That means everybody can get ISO 1345 and all these other standards that go with it. So, ISO isn't making money because of that. So that's why FDA didn't go and be a part of that MedSAP program, where they're allowing third-party folks to go ahead and do that. So again, as I mentioned before, there's different types of these inspection programs for QSIT. The comprehensive, which is done first. Then there is the abbreviated if you're doing fine. The compliance follow-up is if there's a problem, maybe that you got areas that are very problematic, say CAPA or design controls, then the next inspection, they're going to follow up just looking at those. These special for cause and risk are ones usually that either CDRH, that's the Center of Device and Radiological Health, that those people will ask the investigators to look at those special areas. So again, these are the areas here. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but here's management controls, design controls, training, CAPA system. Again, it's not only 820, but 803, 806, and 821. documentation change control, material controls, equipment controls, facility controls, and production process control. So as you can see, there's a lot of things here that deal with these areas. So I have basically compliance programs here. These are basically the instructions that FDA uses for medical devices. Let's give an example here, the ones that I've listed here. The IOM is basically how to do these inspections. The CFRs are listed. So here's some ones. 820 is the quality system, medical device reporting, corrections, removals, tracking, and UDIs. Again, I've put links here where you can go ahead and look at all these areas. So you shouldn't be surprised at all when FDA comes in, because what they have and you have are the same thing. So again, the first one is the level 1, which is CAPA +1. Then the baseline is everything. Then the level 3 is a compliance for cause. And why I have these listed this way, plus with sterilization, medical device reporting, device tracking, corrections and removals, is that depending upon which these are, you may get different type of inspections afterwards and warnings. So again, this is what audits are looking at. They're looking at, are you conforming or not conforming with 803, 806, 821, 830. Now, 830 medical, the identifications there, unique device identifiers, has to do with labeling. But there's sections that are in these other ones, 803, 806, 821, 820, etc., that really have 830 in them. So it's how to do it, not is it a problem, meaning did you not conform to the UDI. That is called mislabeling. So FDA will collect an example paperwork problem of your label, and they'll submit that to the investigations branch and the compliance officers to see if you actually did not do 21 CFR 830 properly. So that's an example of a documentary sample if it's a labeling problem. They're not going to put those type of problems or things like, oh, you don't have a 510K or PMA or those type of things on a 483. Unless CDRH wants you to put those things on there. So these are basically areas that they're going to put in besides 820. And it's basically, are you doing this or not doing this? If you're not doing it, they're going to cite it generically for the Turbo ER, then put the specific example for your company in there. Why that's important is that deals with two types of situations. The first one is OIA, official action indicated. What that means is you have a major problem here in one of these areas, or maybe all of the areas. I've seen some firms that have nothing, no procedures, no forms, nothing. They just make a product and out it goes. And so that basically means that you don't have a quality system at all. You can have major elements of these systems, say for design controls, that you do not do design verification or design validation, which is a major area in design control. So if you don't do that, then that's a problem with design controls. Or if you have a problem with QSIT, let's look at CAPA system. So, you don't want to basically say, oh, we're going to correct it per our CAPA system when our CAPA system is broken. You have to fix your CAPA system first. So these are areas here that they're actually looking at. And if you have these, then this is a situation one where you're going to get a warning letter. And I'll explain what that is in a second. Situation 2 is all the other violations from 820, 803, 806, etc. they're going to list. So these are ones that, again, as I explained earlier, with risk, that these will not cause a bad product to go out the door. Whereas the ones above here, situation one will or have the probability of having a bad product go out the door. And what I mean by bad product doesn't necessarily mean that that product is failing your testing requirements, but the safety and efficacy of that product will cause somebody, or maybe cause somebody, to have some type of reaction or injury or death, that type of thing. And in that type of instance, that's where that special complaint comes in, Part 803, which is MDRs. So basically, what they'll do when FDA is all done, they'll meet with everybody. They're going to print out the 43. And again, we're going to talk about it. And if there's any corrections, say that they tell you about it, you have a problem with CAPA, then you corrected that. And then, look it over, and they may take that off. So you're going to work together with the FDA, and, the final 43 will then be printed out. You're going to discuss them, and you're going to annotate. The FDA person is going to talk with you. You're going to say, yeah, we corrected it. We didn't verify it. We did correct it and verify it. Then you give them the evidence that you've done that. We're going to correct it by, whatever date. Then, we're going to consider it, meaning we don't know what we're going to do yet. So that goes on the 43, excuse me. Afterwards, the 43, you should basically submit paperwork, a corrective action plan to FDA. Say, this is, we're going to get these activities done. You don't necessarily have to do that in 15 days, but you actually have to go ahead and make sure it's done. So FDA is going to write a report, and it's going to be given to the compliance officers. And they're going to decide, again, this is risk-based, NAI, VAI, and OAI. NAI is no action indicated. VAI is voluntary action indicated. OAI is official action indicated. What those are is risks. Those are basically, you have no findings, you have some findings, but they're not critical, and you have major findings. So with medical devices, everything that's in situation one, as I explained earlier, is OAI. Everything else is VAI or NAI. So FDA writes it up, and if it's VAI or NAI, you get a copy of the report after it's closed. This is only for medical devices. So again, NAI is no action indicated. That means, minor things that they don't put on the 43, or no problems at all. VAI is the situation 2 deficiencies, one or more of those. So these are voluntary action indicated, which means that, maybe we, forgot in the SOP about design transfer, but we do design transfer. So that, that's not a critical element compared to, well, we don't do design transfer, and these products aren't conforming to our procedures, and these products going out the door and they're killing somebody. So that is OAI, because, you're linking all these subsystems together and you have a problem. And that's OAI. So they're going to send you a warning letter for that. And that's a situation 1. So if you don't correct what's in the warning letter, basically FDA can come back and do other things, such as seize your product, put an injunction against you. For foreign companies, have a import alert of detention. And if you're really doing things improperly, they can hop over to the criminal side and do these prosecutions. That's where the Department of Justice comes in and helps FDA with those things. And again, there's civil penalties and recalls that deal with, again, medical devices. So those mandated ones are Part 810. That's specific for medical device products that deals with public health. So again, these are the different type of actions. The civil things here are ones that the FDA compliance officer handles. On the criminal side, those things, the Department of Justice and the Criminal Investigations Group of FDA handles. So what happens when there is medical device problems? Basically, you want to make sure that you address those, because warning letter is the first one, because there's other things can occur afterwards: seizing product, a consent decree, an injunction, civil money penalty, and prosecution. Civil money penalty is basically saying that for each of these problems, there's going to be people that are being involved in it. So each of those have a monetary effect. So companies can be charged millions of dollars for not having proper quality system areas in medical devices. Foreign companies, basically, you get a warning letter and the product cannot come into the US until you get your act together. So again, 15 days is the request. They want you to have some corrective action plan. Doesn't mean you have to do all this, have it corrected in 15 days. But, they may say, well, maybe you need a consulting person or group to come in and help you with this. And so, that's where, EAS, myself, and others come in and help you with that. Again, on the foreign side, make sure everything is in English. And you actually have to have all your paperwork, your SOPs and everything else in English to send that to FDA if you're a foreign company. Because if it's not in English, they don't know what they're looking at. So these are basically some sites here that have regarding investigations, inspections, the compliance programs for medical devices, etc. So now we're going to look at some type of trends. Now, these here, you can go ahead and you can click on those and you can pull up the same type of data that I did. So it started with the Quality and Transparency Initiatives in 2009. And FDA has data, not just with medical devices, but all the areas that they look at. So you basically can click on those. The one in the middle deals with medical devices, about the quality areas there. Again, as a reminder, these are the major areas here that we're looking at for 820, but also 803, 806, 821 comes into place. So again, here they are, simplified here. Production process controls, CAPA management, design, documentation, change control. So earlier on, when FDA started this, it's in two parts. And why I have it in two parts is because there was a dive. And I'll explain a little bit later what that problem is. So the past metrics, the major problems there were the CAPA system, management controls, production process controls. So overall, these are the major areas here when you look at the QSIT inspections: CAPA, management controls, production process controls, problematic, and of course, records too. And then for the non-QSIT type of inspections, that is, those for cause and compliance, CAPA is the majority of one: production process controls and records. So, here's some data in the past. As you can see, because of budgetary, it goes up and down. Again, OAI, the same thing. It depends upon how many inspections that were done. So again, these numbers go up and down, but the important thing here is looking at the subsystems. So here you could see that production process controls and CAPAs are the major ones, whereas design controls, documentation change control, and management controls, there are problems, but they're not as high as those two. But the question is why? And of course, the warning letters too. The warning letters, again, are you have a 43 and there's major problems here. So the major problems, so you could see there's a spike. And again, that goes with how many inspections you have over the years that FDA has done. So because there are more inspections that were done in 12 and 13, that's why you have more warning letters. It goes with how many firms you have versus the actions. Here's some examples here of the top citations here. Again, I've broken them down. There's 803, 820, etc. As you can see, improper procedures, because procedures are basically the gist. If you don't have procedures, then you can't do an operation properly or have people trained against them. So yeah, you need procedures, documentation, and then activities. So again, these change over time, but basically they're the same thing. Lack of procedures, not doing validations, not doing auditing, etc. Lack of sometimes lack of purchasing controls or procedures too. And that's because of you may have changing of suppliers. And you don't think about that when you do design controls and other activities. So again, these are just some top level type of observations that FDA has found in the past. Present, same kind of thing. CAPA system, production process controls, purchasing controls here. So again, these data, really show the same activities going on. I'm going to go back to this one. Why there's a big spike there is because of the Center of Tobacco Products. There's basically been an increase of companies that didn't comply with those. Basically, they were selling it to cigarettes and those products to minors. So that's why there's a very long list there of those versus others. So these are just some data here that I pulled from those sites. Again, here's some new ones. Again, same thing: inadequate procedures, non-conforming products, CAPA systems, quality audits, design controls. Again, nothing has really changed per se too much. And then, you also can, besides pull it from generic, you can pull it for specific areas. Again, not just devices, but everything. So they list it by firm names. You can see, the dates when the inspection was done in those generic observations there, and the sites for different companies too. Again, so these latest ones here, same thing. Nothing is occurring that's questionable. But as you notice, there's a little slight gap, and that's because FDA reorganized in 2017. They went from a district approach to a approach that's run by the centers. So they have these geographical areas where, a certain area in the US is bound by medical devices, let's say. That doesn't necessarily mean that nothing else is covered. That means that those investigators there do medical devices through the whole country. So they travel all around. Let's say that's group one. Then group two is, say, pharmaceuticals. That may be another geographical area in the US. So those folks cover pharmaceuticals. Example for that is Detroit District, which is Indiana and Michigan. So that is handled by the pharmaceutical group there. They're headed in the Detroit district office. And then they report to the folks in Cedar. Then there's other groups, in medical devices, report to the medical device group, CDRH. So that's the reorganization of FDA. It's mostly not from the outside of the district, but it's more condensed, where the investigations compliance group, the laboratories, all report to the different centers. So it's a little reorganization, plus these tobacco inspections that I mentioned too, and now, COVID-19. So that's why it's dropped since 2017. Also want to cover post-market. Post-market activities mean, well, after we manufactured and design a product and out it goes, we have problems. Or hopefully we don't have problems. We're going to catch them before you have some type of complaint or recall or situation like that. So post-market assessment is basically you're monitoring to make sure that a safe and effective product has been released. And if not, you're going to do something about it. So again, there's two types, proactive and reactive. Proactive means we're going to collect data internally to make sure that everything's fine. If there is a problem, we're going to put CAPA system in place and correct it beforehand. Reactive is the bad product already went out the door and it could cause a serious injury or death. That's why if you have those type of complaints, you have to report those within 5 or 30 days to the FDA. That's under Part 803. You do a health hazard evaluation, you determine, yes, it's very serious. In this case, I'm going to have the product fixed or bring it back. And that's a correction or removal. That's under 806. So if you do that because it's a health hazard, you have 10 days to report that activity to the FDA. So these 806 and 803 activities, you can have, one example of you didn't do it correctly, and it be the warning letter situation, the OAI, because they're very serious in nature. They're very high risk-based problem areas. So again, basically, medical device is a little different than the other areas. FDA doesn't have to prove that the product is physically bad. If you don't have a quality system, basically that means that your product, may be bad, go out the market. But you need all these data to look at to find out, do we have a problem here? So that's where you're doing these assessments. And it's basically after you transfer the design from the design side, if your product has to be done that way, all class 2 and all class 3 products go through design controls. Certain class 1 products do. And the classification is done by risk. Class 1 product are products that if there is a problem, you designed and or manufactured it wrongly, that the occurrence of somebody dying or getting seriously injured is very small. Class 3 product are ones that if you don't design it or manufacture, probably the probability of somebody dying and or getting seriously injured is very high. Class 2 somewhere in the middle. So example of a class 1 product are ones like, bandages, splints, crutches. Class 3 products are like pacemakers, X-ray machines. Class 2 are products kind of in the middle, maybe some type of implants and those type of things. So again, these are all done by risk. Again, you want to make sure that your CAPA system is fine. You're looking at internal and external problems. Again, internal non-conformances are, again, 3 different types of products. That is received product, in process product, and finished product due to testing. And if it fails, that's the internal nonconformances. So you have to basically go ahead and correct that. You also may have corrections, corrective actions, and preventive actions with that. And again, those corrective actions, corrections, preventive actions, everyone thinks they're the same, but they're really not. Then if you do have problems, really have to go ahead and put your CAPA system in place mostly with the complaints, look at MDRs, adverse events, again, health hazard analysis, go ahead and see if we need to, do these corrections per Part 806. That is that you recall it or you fix it outside of the company. What do these activities cover when you fix these things? Everything, basically. So if you have a problem in, say, design controls, that may mean that you may have a problem in supplier quality management, or based in production process controls too. So that's why all these are interlinking. One of the problems here is the language. Post-market surveillance really means two different things. In ISO 1345, it's like post-market assurance, which is, we're going to look at our data and see if there's a problem here. Whereas on the FDA side, post-market surveillance is a specific regulation that they ask companies to supply data to them. I'll get that in a second. So again, when you talk about these post-market activities, a lot of companies really think, oh, it's just complaints. Well, it's really not complaints. You're looking at all these areas. You're looking at, surveys, clinical studies, literature, all different type of feedback, FDA inspections, all these different areas. And again, FDA on the medical device side has all these databases where you can look and find all these things. So not only with your company, but other companies too, and these products generically. There's a problem with it. So again, if there is a major type of problem, that's where these other sections come into place, 803 and 806. That is, we have serious complaints and now we need to do something about it on the risk side. So we're going to either have that product come in, or we're going to fix it outside of the field. That's 806. If you do that because it's a risk to health, you have 10 days to report that. Then comes Part 822. That's the post-market surveillance that I mentioned about. That's where FDA tells specific firms, those usually high-level class 3 medical device companies, usually tell them to go ahead and submit these data to them. So that's one that you have to do only if FDA tells you to do that. Again, these are high-level products done by risk. That's because FDA sees, or with these data, that there could be a problem with these products. Again, the life-saving, life-supporting implanted products, very high class 2 and 3 medical device products. So this is some information about 822 here. Again, I just put this here generically. A lot of companies do not have to worry about this section if they don't manufacture those life-saving, life-supporting high-level class 2 and class 3 medical device products. It's actually listed in there which ones those are. Again, a lot of these companies think about complaints. Complaint is the problem. That's not it. It's looking at everything, looking at the global requirements for all these activities. So again, want to make sure that when you're doing these activities that you think about early on, well, what other problems do we have? So you don't want to design a bad product. You want to take those considerations in from your company and or others. So you want to make sure that you have a proper quality system. Everybody's trained. Everybody knows the regulations. All these systems here are linked together. You also, with medical devices, have to think about who's doing what. So you can manufacture a product, but have someone else own it. Or you can actually get parts from someone else. They manufacture these sub-assemblies and you put it together. So there may be problems with the subassembly or the contract manufacturer or the original equipment manufacturer, etc. So everybody has to basically be on the same page. If not, then there could be a problem there. But really in the real world, what occurs here is everybody basically puts out the fire. They don't look at the overall picture. They look at corrections, not corrective actions, preventive actions. So again, the CAPA system, corrective action, preventive action, that's what CAPA stands for. So you're basically looking at all these activities here in a CAPA system. Again, I'm not going through, CAPA and all that right now, but just giving you a quick overview that it's risk-based, just like everything else. Again, you look at these data, you basically analyze them, and you see, okay, do we have a problem? Then we need to act upon it. That's basically what the CAPA system is. It looks at all these different areas: auditing, installation, traceability, management reviews, complaints, MDRs, etc. Again, correction means, hey, we have a bad product. We're going to either fix it or we're going to destroy it. A corrective action means, why did that occur? Well, that occurred because maybe somebody wasn't trained right. We didn't validate some process. We didn't, correct some, let's say, a machine that was malfunctioning, so we didn't validate that properly. Preventive is, well, this occurred with product X. Well, we manufacture product Y on the same machine. Would that occur too? So that's the preventive side. So that's where you have to consider the correction, corrective action, and preventive action here for these areas. Again, you want to rank these problems, because depending upon what they are, you're going to do these various actions in correction, corrective action, preventive action. You're not necessarily going to do preventive action all the time. You're always going to do correction if there's a problem with a product. Corrective action deals with the process, design controls, CAPA system, management controls, etc. So again, if there's major problems here, you're going to cover all these different areas. Again, here's what you have to realize when you deal with CAPAs. It's looking at all these things globally. So if you have complaints, you have internal nonconformances, FDA actions, say notified body comes in, does inspections. You put all these together and you see, do we have a problem here? That's what I mean by globally. You look at all these data and see if there's commonalities with them. Again, here's some, recommendations I have here. If you have bad design controls or CAPA or complaints, this is kind of some things to do. Again, these are the major areas, and when we were looking at those data, there are some problems here. So that's basically, this in a nutshell. If anyone has any questions, just, let me know. Okay, so I'll basically hop it back over to Amy. Oops, she's still there? Okay, I guess, if you don't have any questions right now, just think about them. And again, if you're thinking about these operations, I mentioned medical devices, but when you go back and look at those sites that I talked about with the data, it has everything: foods, drugs, cosmetics, tobacco products, biologics, everything in there. I just concentrated on medical devices here, but those same areas, you can pull up your own data for these other systems too.
Great. George, thank you so much for such an informative webinar, and thanks everyone for joining us. As I mentioned, we have, as you can see, a ton of slides that with great information George has provided, so we'll get those together in a handout that we can post to the website for you to download. And of course, if you have any needs for medical device quality consulting or any other area as well, please think of EAS and George, and we look forward to serving you in the future. Thanks so much for joining us. And George, thank you again for your presentation.
Okay, there's one question that popped up about Class 1 products.
Okay.
So it says, does Class 1 need to be in compliance with ISO 9001 or 1345? The key there with Class 1 products is it's very low risk. So on the FDA side, FDA, if you go into the FDA databases for it shows for Class 1 products, those products either have to comply with all of the QSR except for design controls, or maybe just for complaints and MDRs, depending upon what it is. So if you manufacture just Class 1 medical device products on the FDA side of things, then you should have a quality system in place. It's a good practice to do it, but FDA really won't come in and do the inspection for Class 1 products like they will for Class 2, Class 3. When it comes to ISO per se, if you have customers, let's say in Canada or in Europe, you have to comply with 1345. So 1345 is the major one that deals with medical devices. Again, goes back to the MedSep program. A lot of these countries, Health Canada, EU, they're going into that type of program. So it's looking at 1345 plus all these other areas, like if you have products that are into the US, then the FDA ones, or Japan, etc. So it depends upon where you're actually manufacturing the product and distributing the product. 9001, really, that one doesn't deal with finished device products. That deals with components and non-medical device products. Sometimes some of these products are really non-medical device areas. So that's the 9000s one. The 1345 is the GMPs for medical device products per se. So 1345, the 2016 versions is the latest one. That one and 820, they're very similar in nature. A couple slight differences here. That's why FDA and 1345 are linked together. That's why that MedSep program, FDA allows those type of inspections to be okay. They count for routine type of inspections. But if there's a problem in that area, then FDA can go ahead and do that, level 2 and level 3 area. So that's where the MedSep program and the QSIP program kind of interlink on the FDA side. When you're talking about international, it's really just 1345 and the specific requirements with those nations. So Class 1 products depends upon, not just Class 1, all the products, depends upon where you're marketing them to, with what areas. So again, if it's in the US, it's 820. If it's Health Canada and EU, it's 1345. But again, it's various sections, 2012 versus 2016. Then there's different types of risk that come with it too. So that's kind of a generic question. I hope I answered your question there. But again, it really depends upon where you're marketing it to, what regulations you have, and what risk there is with the product and the problem. That's why these data are so important, because it may not occur at your company right now, but if you look at your neighbor and they have the same manufacturer, same type of product, may not be doing it the same way as you can figure out, well, let's fix our system, because it's continuous improvement. That's what ISO 1345 and 820 are about, is you're always improving your system. Because if not, it will explode, and you'll basically have to bring in all these consultants with a lot of money. And there are major companies, if you go into the FD website, that you see with these warning letters, injunctions, civil money penalties because their quality system was broken. Okay, thanks.
Great. Thank you, George. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and look forward to seeing you at a future EAS event soon. Have a great afternoon.